I'm just going to make a video so you guys can watch this on your own time. See how far I get through this video in the next 15 minutes. And then that'll be what you guys will do during class. It's gotten a little crazy in here the last few days, and I know some of us have trouble focusing, so hopefully this will narrow down what you need to do and focus on for our next assessment. So we left off, we were talking about experiments, surveys, and observational studies. So we're going to continue talking about experiments. Okay, an experiment imposes a treatment on individuals to collect data, right? So we're going to look at these different scenarios and identify the treatment and if we think it would be random. Remember last week we talked about random, sampling, and biased and unbiased, things like that. Okay, so we have Fred and Macy estimating how the rebound of a tennis ball is changed if it's soaked in water overnight and then allowed to dry completely. So I don't know a whole lot about tennis, but I'm thinking rebound is like how fast it bounces back. Okay, their physical education teacher gave them 20 used tennis balls to use as their sample. The students noticed that 10 of them were Wilson and other 10 were Dunlop. I think I'm saying that right, tennis balls. They plan to soak only 10 of the 20 overnight. So they're going to soak 10 and compare them to the other 10 that were not soaked. Okay, identify the treatment. Okay, obviously soaking half of the tennis balls. Okay, is the sample of 20 a random sample? Explain. Well, I mean, kind of, but not really. I would say no, because we don't know how old some of the tennis balls are. And which brands are used for the experiment. Okay, so we don't know, maybe some of the ones that the PE teacher gave them are not as old as others, so they're going to have a different reaction time, rebound time anyway. We don't know which ones were used. Are they the Wilson ones or the Dunlop ones that are going to either be soaked or not soaked? So there's a lot going on, a lot of unknowns, right? And you guys have done enough scientific experience where you just have to have one thing that you're evaluating. You can't have 5 different things because then you don't know which actually had the impact. Okay, so they have different ideas about how to organize them for the experiment to obtain the best results. Fred thinks you should soak the 10 Wilson overnight and keep the 10 Dunlop dry. Macy says group all the Wilson and randomly choose 5 to be soaked overnight, then repeat for the Dunlop, while the other 10 that are not selected remain dry. Which idea would obtain the best random sample? I think we can all agree that Macy's would work the best because you're not just because when you do what Fred said, you're comparing 2 different brands, and that doesn't, you're going to get different results for different brands possibly. So Macy, because the brands are sampled equally, right? So you would have 5 from each brand being wet and 5 from each brand being left dry, and so you can compare those results better. So it's kind of like having 2 experiments within it instead of having like with Fred, you wouldn't know what the why. Is it because it's a different brand, or is it because it was left dry or not? So Macy's really narrows down like what's being evaluated. Okay. An observational study occurs when a researcher observes and records measurements of variables of interest but does not impose a treatment. So I think we talked about this a little bit last week in one of the classes, right? You would just watch people. You're not doing anything, asking them anything. You're not surveying. You're just strictly observing. Okay, so let's look down here. Lucy read an article online with this headline: among employed Americans, people who text frequently tend to have lower paying jobs than those who do not. Lucy immediately sent a text message to her friend Ethel. Texting makes you have less money. Too bad for us. Okay, so explain why this scenario should be considered observational and not experimental. Then describe a method that the authors of the article could have used to obtain a random sample of employed Americans for this observational study. So why is this observational? Well, all they're doing is just watching people, right? It doesn't say anything about surveying them. It's just they are observing what the people do. So observing behaviors. Right? How could they have obtained a random sample of employed Americans for this study? They could have sent a survey. So instead of just watching people on their phones, they actually went ahead and if you send a survey, like how often do you on your phone, what's your salary, they'd get more reliable data. Do the results of this study provide enough evidence that the cause for people having lower paying jobs is frequent texting? I would say no, right? Maybe their job requires them to be on their phone a lot. Maybe they are on their phone actually doing work. Like sometimes my boys come up to me and they want my attention and I'm like on my phone, but I'm also checking email. So they don't understand that like sometimes you can be on your phone and working, right? So we don't know why are they on their phones. Right? And we also it doesn't say like how they know their salary, right? So how do they know? Right? That's kind of important. Like how did they figure out the salary of the people who are supposedly texting on their phones all the time? Okay, so really this article is I would say not a good resource. And maybe Lucy wants to think about how often she's texting, if that's something she's saying to her friend, like, oh, we're not going to make money. Okay, next page. So now I'm on page 10. Consider each situation below and determine if the scenario is a survey, experiment, or observational study. So a study investigated whether boys are quicker at learning video games than girls. 20 randomly selected boys and 20 randomly selected girls played a video game that they had never played before. The time it took them to reach a certain level of expertise was recorded. So this would be observational, right? They're just watching them and recording when they get to a certain level. They didn't actually do anything, ask the students anything, no actual treatment was given, okay? And there was no survey. For a statistics project, Gabby collected data by posting 5 questions on a poster board around her statistics classroom and recorded how her classmates responded. Okay, this is obviously a survey, right? She's asking questions. Anytime somebody's asking questions about something, that's a survey. Department of Transportation wants to test a new product used to paint road markings on a city's streets. On the 20 comparable stretches of road that are identified, the current paint is randomly applied to 10 stretches of road, and the new paint is applied for the other 10 sections. Okay, so I would say that this is definitely an experiment, right? Because they are actually doing something. There is a treatment. That's what we're looking for. 10 get the old paint, 10 get the new paint. Okay, so that is clearly an experiment that they are doing to test out the different paint. Okay. Non-neutral data, misleading statistics. Okay, so we're on to another section of data collecting. How do statistics and data representations become non-neutral? Meaning, when can we read through, like, read between the lines, read the fine print? What is the motivation of a data representation? So we have some videos. We're not going to watch them, but it's basically telling you, like, why a certain toothpaste is better than the other. Okay, consider the following claim. At one time, Colgate claimed 80% of dentists recommended their brand of toothpaste. Use this information to answer the questions on the next page. It's just this page down here. What is the intention of the manufacturer by presenting the information in the commercial as well as the claim? So why would a company advertise that 80% of something was like, yay, they recommended it? Well, they want people to buy their product. Okay, also 80% is a high number. So they're thinking, well, if you see that 80%, you will automatically think, oh, then it must be really good if 80% of dentists recommended their brand. Okay. If the information were presented in Colgate advertisements today, would it persuade you to purchase their products? So pretending that we had watched these commercials, do advertisements work for you? I guess that's the main question of this. If you see something on TV and you're like, wow, that's something I think I need in my life, would that work for you? I will tell you that sometimes if I see those commercials that are like, teeth whiteners or something like that, I'm like, well, I would like whiter teeth, and I might be willing to try something. But am I jumping off my couch at that moment to go purchase it? Probably not. So it really just depends on your need at the time. And your motivation. Is that something that's really important to you at that very moment? Okay. So persuading people to buy things, the toothpaste companies have done enough research. They know keywords to use to try to motivate you, to pique your interest, to try to persuade you. Okay. All right. Next page. We're on page 12. Suppose Crest used the same data Colgate used and made the same claim that 80% of the dentists recommended their brand. Is this possible? Explain your thinking. I mean, yes, it could be. They could kind of distort what 80% were actually saying. That's the tricky part, that companies are going to collect data and then make it work for whatever they want you to believe. Okay, so you have to be smarter than that. You have to kind of, again, look and see what the motivation is of that company, see where you fit into that target audience. Provide one additional example of a product or service whose advertising might use or did use data in this manner. Let's see here. What's something that I purchase? I'm trying to think of things I see commercials for and if I actually purchase them. Oh, I don't know. I think one thing that I always am looking for is dog toys, right? And maybe that's relevant to you, maybe not. I'm always looking for the durability. My dog likes to destroy things. So if there's an advertisement that whatever percent were not able to get destroyed by a dog, that's going to pique my interest. That is going to maybe persuade me to try it. Let's see, what else do I purchase sometimes? Laundry detergent, right? That's something that is very relevant. How long does the scent last? Right, I want my clothes to smell clean, so sometimes they'll advertise what percentage of people said they could still smell the fresh whatever Gain or Tide or whatever it is. Okay, that's something that would trigger my interest. Okay. If data from a study favors a particular outcome over others, the data is said to be non-neutral and therefore serves a particular interest. In the previous activity, since the recommendations of certain brands of toothpaste were favored over other brands that might have been part of the study, Colgate and Crest could use this data to attempt to motivate customers. Neutral numbers can be converted to non-neutral statistics. For example, consider the number 15. On its own, 15 is a neutral number. Now attach the number 15 to a statistical claim. Only 15% of people who voted in the last election are in favor of renovating City Hall. Since 15% of voters were in favor, 85 were opposed. This statistic now serves as the interest of people who were opposed, right? So you can take the inverse of something and turn it into a claim saying, well, 15% were interested, so that must mean that 85 were not. If you're somebody who's not interested in something, now all of a sudden it's non-neutral, right? Now you've used what you've collected and you've turned it a little bit to get people who are, you want to also agree with your input, with your perspective, okay, with your interests. So it's kind of like taking a fact and twisting it a little bit. They're not, but they don't have proof that 85% are opposed. They only know that 15 were in favor. So they're assuming that that must mean 85 were not. And there might have been 50% of people that were like, I don't care, but they don't have to put that on there. Okay, that's the tricky part about voting for stuff, right? You have to consider all things, yes, no, and the people who just don't have any say in it. They don't care either way, right? Consider each situation below and determine the party whose interest is best served. Okay, in a national survey, 90% of customers surveyed like the new fries at Superburger. Okay, who wins in this study? Well, obviously, Superburger. Okay, they're not saying they're the best fries, but if somebody says 90% that were surveyed liked them, then it makes Superburger look really good. But I mean, they probably only surveyed people at Superburger, right? They didn't get any surveys of people who don't like Superburger, would never be there. They don't care about their French fries, right? So that's definitely non-neutral. In a national survey, 20% of customers surveyed liked the new fries at Superburger. So the people, if this is the number that they say is only 20%, these are the competitors. Competitors are the party that's interested. They want to say, well, not many people liked the fries at Superburger, right? Again, these are still people going to Superburger, but their number benefits them. This number benefits the Superburger people. Okay, so you would want to persuade people not to go there if only 20% of the people who surveyed didn't like them. I will tell you from personal experience, Burger King is like always changing its French fries, and I gotta be honest, I don't like Burger King French fries. In fact, my family, we will like get burgers at Burger King and then hop over to McDonald's for their fries because they're much better. And I know that sounds ridiculous, but we do it. We actually do that. Luckily, they're like right across the street from each other. But okay, so this benefits Superburger, this benefits the competitors. All right, here we're talking about misleading, biased claims, okay? Remember we talked about Colgate claimed 80% of dentists recommended their brand. Okay, does this claim have the potential to be misleading and or biased? If so, provide some reasons as to how this claim could be misleading or readers in the space. Okay, so one of the main things here is like, yeah, 80% recommended, but maybe they also recommend Crest, right? So just because 80% were like, yeah, Colgate's great, maybe they also said, but so is Crest, and so is, I don't even know all the names of toothpastes out there. There's so many now. But what Colgate's not going to tell you is that, yes, they also recommended Crest because they just want to hang on to the fact that 80% recommended their brand. Right? So this could be misleading or a little biased, right? Now, if it's like dentists, the American Dental Association putting out a, hey, we think this is the best toothpaste, well, then that's not biased, right? That's going to be neutral. That's going to be their actual opinions, and they don't benefit from that. Like dentists don't benefit from which toothpaste we buy. They can tell us which ones they think are great, but they're not going to make money based on which toothpaste we go and buy from the store. Okay. We discussed how data and statistics can sometimes be misleading. The potential is greater if the statistics are generated to serve a particular interest. Same theme here. Consider each claim and determine 2 factors that might lead to the data presented being misleading. Try the new Breath Fresher gum. It freshens breath 90% longer than the leading brands. What? How do they measure that? How would you even measure 90% longer than the leading brands? Like how, that's not possible. Okay. 2 factors, measurable, and I don't know what another factor might be. I don't know, I'll have to come back to that one. Maybe you guys can think of one. We don't need new tennis courts in this neighborhood. 2 out of 3 people I asked think the court we have is now is perfectly fine. Okay, well, do these people play tennis? right? Where did they get that data? Did they just like stop people randomly walking their dogs that maybe don't like to play tennis? So for them, that's not going to be something that's interesting to them. Or 2 out of 3 people think that the court we now have is perfectly fine. So do they play tennis? That's another factor that might. I don't know. Again, I can't think of another factor, but maybe you guys can help me out and tell me something you thought of that would also be a factor that is misrepresented, right? I guess this would be like how many people were actually asked. Was it really only 3 people? Like, or is it simplified down to 2 out of 3 people? Because this is not a very good subset. Were they random? Were they their friends? Things like that are to be considered. Still can't come up with another way that this one is misleading. But again, hopefully you guys can. Okay. We'll stop right there. We got to page 15. And hopefully we can get through more in tomorrow's video. All right. Thanks, guys.